test drive.
I think I'm going to avoid that online because the last thing I want is clips of me sitting around the internet out of context. And surveillance, I think it's entirely inappropriate. I can't even present a public interest defense to a jury of my peers.
All this knowledge in your head.
If I were providing information that I know that's in my head, these sources go dark that were previously productive. They would see new sources of disinformation appearing within these channels.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
yes.
He's crazy.
Right.
He's not credible at all. The intelligence community would be able to detect that. They would see changes in the type of information that's going through it.
Fingerprints all over it, and that if you're not actually a spy, you're an unwitting agent.
Lawyers, investigators, because they recognize that it vastly increases their powers of investigation. Possibly even accountants. Anyone who has an obligation to protect the privacy interests of their clients is facing a new and challenging world, and we need new professional training and new professional standards to make sure that we have mechanisms to ensure accountants.
Knowing what we know now, what is the responsibility of professionals to change their behavior if they're dealing with sensitive information? I mean,
have to be particularly conscious about any sort of network signaling, any sort of connection, any sort of constantly increasing list, and one that we're not even aware of today, I would say. The question is, why are our private details that are transmitted online, why are our private details that are stored on our personal devices any different than the details and private records of our lives that are stored in our private journals? There shouldn't be this distinction between digital information and printed information. It's all the private records of the most intimate activities throughout our lives that are aggregated and compiled and stored for increasing frequencies of time. It may be that by seizing all of the records of our private activities, by watching everywhere we go, by watching everything we do, by monitoring every person we meet, by analyzing every word we say, by waiting and passing judgment over every association we make and every person we love, that we could uncover lawyers, investigators. We shouldn't trust them without verifying what their activities are, how they're using our data, and deciding for ourselves whether it's appropriate where they draw the lines. And it's not just one person, it's many of them. So I raised concerns about these programs that I had worked with, and that's both laterally and vertically in my work. I went to and I showed these programs. I said, what do you think about this? Isn't this unusual? Isn't this unconstitutional? Isn't this a violation of rights?
you're talking about patterns of behavior. Just to rephrase the question, were there
specific
things where you actually...
For example, an intimate nude photo of someone in a sexually compromising situation. So what do? They turn around in their chair and they show their coworker. And their coworker says, oh, hey, that's great. Send that to Bill down the way. And then Bill sends it to George sends it to Tom. And sooner or later, this person's whole life has been seen by all of these other people. It's never reported. Nobody ever knows about it because the auditing of these systems is incredibly weak. The fact that your private images, records of your private lives, records of your intimate moments have been taken from your private communication stream without any specific authorization, without any specific need, is itself a violation of your rights.
And you saw instances of that happening?
Absolutely, yeah.
Numerous, or?
It's routine enough, depending on sort of the company you keep, it could be more or less frequent.
Vaccinate shot.
The single most important factor that explains the failures and oversight that we've seen.
Yeah, surprise, nigga. You should have knew I was coming. Bitch, you should have knew I was coming. You wouldn't want it, I'm sick of your shit, so get used to the plump. You wouldn't want it, I'm sick of your shit, so get used to the plump. You wouldn't want it, I'm sick of your shit, so get used to the plump. Yeah, surprise, nigga. We're done with, you knew I was coming. Run it.